Hey, what's up, everybody? Views from the 612, wondering what fresh hell we can bring to the world via takes tonight. If you've been watching the Twitter machine the last few days, you would obviously recognize that there's been no shortage of hashtag hot takes, and so I'm here to bring you some of the more reasonable ones. Hopefully, that is the goal with Views from the 612. And again, as I have noted in the previous two episodes, the goal here is to have the most sane, logical, reasonable takes that you can have. No hot takes here. I'm not trying to get too excited about anything or make up some hyperbole or that sort of thing. I'm just here to bring you what I think a reasonable person thinks on all these issues. I do have three things that I have set aside for tonight. If you want to be part of the show, send questions at Brandon_Warren on Twitter. Tonight, I have it down here on the monitor. Up top, I have the questions from before. I'm trying to figure out how to do this all on the fly. So, I don't know how it's all going to work out, but bear with me here. Again, I'm bringing you whatever fresh hell I find on Twitter tonight because, boy, it has been pretty ugly with Everson Griffen stuff, with Jimmy Butler stuff, with Joe Mauer retirement stuff. We're going to touch on all that here tonight in Views from the 612, Episode 3. So again, thanks for joining. Probably like my duds here. If you want to donate a football jersey, again, I've said this on the previous shows, hit me up on Twitter, send me a DM. I will set it up where you can mail it to me. I will donate it. Not donate it. I will pay $10 to a charity of your choice, send you the receipt so that you get the taxable deduction. I get a cool random jersey to wear. It's got to be XL or double XL because, as you can see, I'm kind of a big boy. But that allows me to kind of have a cool, fun wardrobe for the program. You get to say you were part of it, and I will mention you on the air. So, I don't know. We can have some fun with it. We may get into some, what do we call it here? Mental illness stuff, which has kind of been the thing going around on Twitter tonight. But we'll see where this goes. We'll see what we have time for. But the first thing that I want to get to is the post-mortem from the Vikings losing 27-6 against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. So the initial goal was to do this show on Sunday nights and Thursday nights. That gives us something to get us into the week, gives us something to get us out of the week. That would have made sense to do it on Sunday night. I had some stuff pop up with family and just didn't have time for it. Last night, I was just too tired to get out of bed after I put my girls to bed. So, hey, you're getting me on Tuesday night. But we'll just kind of roll with it and see what comes of this whole business. So, I did write up a few thoughts. Obviously, the Vikings were plus 17 against the Bills. It was the biggest upset in 23 years, I read. So, a couple things that kind of stuck out to me. I saw a lot of people railing on coaching, which to me is, it's a way people try to sound smart without actually being smart. Now, I'm not saying you can't be smart and say that coaching was not good, but if you say someone got out-coached, it always falls flat to me as a description or as an explanation for why a team lost a game. The players play, and at some point you have to blame the players for what happens on the field. Coaches can identify things, they can see things, they can redo things that happen in the second half. But at the end of the day, again, it's on the players to play. If a quarterback sees a read and wants to make an audible, he can do that. It wasn't up to the coach to tell him to change the play. He reads where the linebacker is, wherever the play is supposed to go, checks into a run, checks into a pass, checks out of whatever. So, to me, a lot of times, the out-coached argument is kind of obnoxious. I did see someone, though, say that they were out-coached and didn't make any adjustments. Well, Buffalo didn't score in the second half, so if you want to say they didn't make adjustments, I really don't understand that. And I don't think that Buffalo necessarily went into a shell offense in the second half. I just think what we saw in the first half was the perfect storm of the Vikings doing everything to lose that game. And I think that's about the only way that you can lose a game in the opening 7 or 8 minutes. It was not only a touchdown on the first drive, but a drive that was extended by a hit that you can argue was a little bit ticky-tack, but Linval Joseph did make contact to the crown of the helmet on Josh Allen on a third down play, no less. There was also the face mask by Anthony Barr late in the drive that moved them from, I think, the 27 to about the 12-yard line. And eventually, Buffalo scored. Then it went fumble, field goal, fumble, touchdown, punt, touchdown. And before you knew it, it was 24-0. And By that point too, there's just not that much you can do to get back into the game, but try to play catch up. I did see one take on Reddit about how it was coaching that they only had 6 rushing attempts, and in fact only 4 of them from running backs. I believe it was 2 for Boone and 2 for Latavius Murray. And a lot of times when people say that they look back and they're like, well, why didn't you run the ball more? I think that too kind of falls flat for me, because unless you're looking at the situation, play by play, where you might have run and might have passed, it's easy to look at the end of the game and say, oh, 28 passes and 12 rushes, should have ran more. It happened a lot in the Adrian Peterson era, and to me it's like, yeah, well, if you're 3rd and 12, it doesn't really matter what your play balance is, you have to pass. Because otherwise you're getting those draw plays that everyone hates on 3rd and 12, which are more about field position or setting up your punter or whatever, or making the field goal easier if it's in field goal range. It's to me, it's sort of like people getting mad that a receiver runs a route short of the sticks and the quarterback throws it to him on 3rd down. Well, first of all, yards gained in the air aren't the only way to gain yards in the NFL. Second of all, these routes are all based on timing. You can't run a 10-yard out 12 yards if first down is 12 yards. You run the 10 out, catch it, and try and make a guy miss. If you add 2 yards to your route, you're completely out of sync, and the play's not going to happen anyway. So, to me, a lot of times people just misunderstand the intricacies of the NFL in the sense that, oh, he ran short of the sticks, he threw short of the sticks. Well, if you throw short of the sticks, you either didn't see anyone else open, or you were about to get hit. There's so much more nuance than what fans are willing to give to the NFL that a lot of times, this is a big reason why, in addition to other things, I've stopped tweeting during games, is because it's just so frustrating to me to see people complain about every single play. Second of all, I'm trying to have a more professional baseball image, and so I think that it just, I just think it makes sense for me to stay off Twitter during the games. So we talked about the quick drives for Buffalo to take the 24-0 lead. In fact, they scored on the first 5 times they touched the football, I believe, for their 27 points, and then that was it. I know Anthony Barr was much maligned for how difficult of a game that he had, but my theory was, and you guys can call this a hot take if you really think it is. Hit me with it if you want, but I think this is what I saw when I was watching. The play where Josh Allen did kind of a leap and Barr missed him and ended up picking up a big first down, I think that's a byproduct of a league where guys can't hit the quarterback. Barr, put his head down, but at the same time too, like, he wasn't ready to light up Allen, even though Allen was a runner at that point. And so to me, a lot of these rules, we saw William Hayes tear his ACL because he was trying not to roll over a quarterback. A lot of the rules that have been written, it almost seems to me like these have been written by people who never played. Maybe they played football, but I don't think they played defense or didn't understand the physics of bringing down a quarterback. I mean, you can't dive at a quarterback and then change your path after that. And I think, we saw that in the game against the Packers too, where there was like Kirk Cousins broke free from a tackler, and it was because he didn't want to get a penalty. And so, again, I think you have to realize the nuance of the game with some of these penalties, and that's where they're missing the mark. And now that William Hayes has gotten hurt, I think we've seen another layer to that, in that, again, guys are sacking the quarterback and then getting up and looking around to see if they're going to be flagged, even though they don't think they've done anything wrong. And I think that's a big, easy way to chase people away from the game. Jeff Schwartz, obviously a former offensive lineman who I believe actually was with the Vikings for a short spell, did tweet that he watched the tape, and I saw Arif Hassan retweet this, but it was that Josh Allen didn't really hit any receivers over the middle of the field. Now, he did have the big pickup to Chris Ivory, but that was on a play where everybody was just kind of asleep at the wheel for the Vikings, and it was just kind of you just kind of dropped it over the defense, and Ivory did the rest of the running. I kind of agree with Schwartz, though. I didn't think that Allen's passing from a pure quarterback standpoint was all that impressive. But you got to give the guy his due. For all the questions that he had to answer as a quarterback, he answered a lot of them in the sense that he performed when he needed to. Now, with that said, I don't think he made it, answered the question marks as far as long-term for if he's going to be accurate, if he's going to be a good enough passer in the pocket or, on the run when he's getting chased in the backfield. Is he going to be able to complete those passes to go from, maybe an average quarterback or a Jake Locker type into someone who can actually throw on the run like on Aaron Rodgers, is I don't think he answered a lot of those questions. I just think he made the plays when he had to and where he had to, but also on the run where he did the dive for the end zone. He benefited from a short or a poor angle from Anthony Barr, who, whether it was due to injury or whatever, just did not look up to speed on the field. And I think that's kind of been a big deal for him now for much longer than just this last game. And so, it'll be a question of if he's going to be around after this year. And I think we saw, though, that Barr was really victimized in multiple ways by Josh Allen. But back to the Schwartz thing, I didn't think that Allen's game was necessarily as impressive throwing the football as it was. He just kind of took what was there. We do have to get into the Everson situation, and I did have a long, I don't want to say argument, but it was definitely a discussion with former NFL wide receiver Ron Johnson. And so basically he was like, why couldn't everybody have waited until the next day to report on this? And so he's like, everyone needs to pray for Everson Griffen. And it's like, okay, that's not how news works. If you have a story and you have sources and you've fact-checked it, it's your job as a journalist to get it out there. And, I'm a person who believes in prayer. I'm also a person who believes in telling the truth for their job. Those are mutually exclusive. You saw the tweet that I had. It's kind of, been out there a little bit about how, Everson is, his situation's not worth joking about. It should not be joked about because mental illness is that serious. That's my praying for Everson. That's my caring for Everson the human. Now, as a journalist, though, the way that NFL Network handled it, Tom Pelissero, best in the business, the way that Star Tribune handled it, and again, Star Tribune, very good, they had the facts, whereas Fox 9 reported that he had been arrested, he was breaking into a teammate's house, and those things were not factual. And so to me, the fact that Ron was upset about that was weird in that he also works for Fox 9, and so it was kind of a weird line in the sand for him to be drawing. But then when I started kind of pushing him on the idea that, journalists aren't going to just wait until the next day until all the facts come out. It's like, how do you think the facts come out? The journalists find it. The journalists put those facts out. And so to me, it was just like, it was a lot of blurred lines between what he does, which is, panel discussions and that sort of thing about the Vikings, and what people who break news try to do, something that I would like to be able to do eventually someday. And which I've done, I guess, to some extent a little bit, is that if I can fact check something, I'm going to put it out there if it's factual. At the end of the day, that's the job of a journalist. Mike Berardino told me this, and he's leaving to go cover the Fighting Irish again. Thank you so much for your mentorship, Mike. He's done a great job with the Twins beat here since 2013. But he said journalism is printing what other people don't want public, and it's facts that other people don't want public. And I thought, that's a pretty interesting point. And as long as it's factual, I really don't think there's any problem with it. And so, and then, he was kind of equating it to the idea that, well, anyone can say whatever they want on Twitter. If you search Everson Griffen's name on Twitter, you're going to find a million different stories. To which I say, well, then those people don't deserve the same level of, I don't know if you call it credence, whatever you want to call it. They don't deserve the same level of space in your brain as the actual journalists who know how to talk about and break news and vet the sources and that sort of thing. So, you can go back and look on my timeline at Brandon_Warren on Twitter, talking back and forth with Ron Johnson. Let me know what you think. I really tried not to step out of order. I really tried to, be respectful to Ron, a guy that I've actually never crossed paths with. Funny story, the one time I was supposed to be on a broadcast with Ron was a football game in Eden Prairie, and he didn't even show up. So that's the limited amount of experience I have with former NFL wide receiver Ron Johnson. So, again, we're hoping for the best for Everson. Obviously, that's completely separate of reporting the story and what happened. A tip of the digital cap to the Star Tribune and NFL Network for their great coverage. They did a great job. So let's talk about the Rams for just a second. Obviously, we are 2 days away from the Vikings playing the Rams on the West Coast. I'm just going to come out and say it. I think the short week, I think the quick turnaround helps the Vikings because they can quickly flush just how poorly they played on Sunday. And my theory is this. They're going to beat the Rams because the NFL messes with you. It just messes with you. Nothing that makes any sense. The Vikings were a number one power. They were number one in power rankings to start the year in some places. They went from 6, then they were 9. They're still a legitimately good team. I don't think that what happened here in the last week takes them away from who they are. And so for me, I think they go into LA. I think they win. I got them at 21-17, but I think it's just because the NFL is so crazy that I think they're going to go in there. Obviously, you got Marcus Peters, game time decision, but probably out with a calf. You've got Aqib Talib out with an high ankle sprain. And again, so I think unpopular pick, 21-17 Vikings, but I think that the NFL is just crazy enough that even though the Rams haven't lost yet, you see the Chiefs haven't lost yet, and they were debating on NFL Network which team was better, I think that the Vikings go in and beat the Rams, which I know doesn't make any sense. So, we'll see what happens. All right, so I want to switch gears to the Jimmy Butler situation. It's obviously, caused a lot of discussion here over the last week or so since he's demanded a trade. And so I looked at it like this. What would happen if they called Jimmy Butler's bluff and made him stay for another year? They would retain bird rights. They could offer him 5 years, $190 million. What would happen? Just hypothetically, I'm not saying that Jimmy wouldn't not show up. He wouldn't try. Here's what I think. His cap figure for this year is $20.445 million. The cap for this year is $118.5 million. So if they keep him around next year, if they were to have a similar cap number, they would have $43.55 million open before having to see if Jeff Teague opts back in. If Jeff Teague opts back in, they're $24.55 before considering what Jimmy Butler would get on a bird rights deal. So what I was kind of trying to figure out is how much money would Jimmy Butler lose if the Wolves called his bluff, he had to play for them this year, and then looked elsewhere in the offseason. Now, I believe what I've figured out, and again, people, correct me if I'm wrong, send me a tweet, send me a message, whatever, but I believe the most they can offer is 4 years and $110 million. So that comes out to $27 million per year, 27.5. Whereas the Wolves would be about 38 with full bird rights, 5 years, 190. Is $11.5 million an amount of money and an extra year something Butler is willing to walk away from because he's so upset with the Wolves? Now, it's very possible that that's the case. But if not, does it make sense for the Wolves to call his bluff for a year? Because he's not a guy who's not going to... I don't see a way that Jimmy Butler is going to sulk. I think he's too intense. I think he would still throw himself back into the situation, even though he's put all his cards on the table to the point where he would play hard to make sure that his next contract is as big as possible, whether it's 4 years, $110 million, or 5 and $190 if the Wolves offer the max the next year. But my question is this: is there any way that it makes sense for the Wolves to call his bluff here and let him walk at the end of the year? Again, maybe it's a crazy take, and I can willingly accept that if that's the case. But if so, then you look at Gorgie Jang, obviously being on the books for next year. Then it comes down to what happens with Tyus Jones, who's probably going to take up quite a bit of whatever money they might have left. But to anyone else, does it make sense to possibly call the bluff of Jimmy Butler? I'm not sure. It's just something I was kicking around. It's something that they can afford, and so I'm just curious if anybody thinks that'll happen. Now, the third question was actually the question of the show. So if this guy is listening, you have won a Prince Fielder starting lineup figure. Boom, right there. So hit me up with your address. Aaron Summers, you asked, does Joe Mauer actually retire this winter? If yes, how long does it take before he is working for the team in some capacity? And what role might suit him better, coaching or something in the front office? So, Aaron, I think this is a great question because everybody's kind of wondering where Joe's going to go after Sunday. The Twins play the White Sox after the Tigers. Season's over after that. It's been a disastrous year. You don't have to ask around too much. You can read anything I've written on zonecoverage.com. It has been a disastrous year for the Twins. Joe Mauer at age 35 is starting to show some signs of wear. And to me, the writing is on the wall that he probably will retire at the end of the year. Again, feel free in the chat to mention what you think your opinions are of if Joe Mauer will retire this offseason or not. But to me, it just kind of feels like a final, there's some finality to these games he's playing for the Twins here down the stretch. And so, yeah, I really do think that Mauer's coming towards the end. If he was going to come back, I really think it would be on a 1-year deal with an option, and it wouldn't be very expensive. But I just can't see any way that it makes sense for him to be a bench bat based on the positions he plays and doesn't play. So I really do think this is going to be it for Joe. I think he would take some time away from the game. Obviously, baby due this fall. He also has 2 young daughters. So while I think he might like to take that Justin Morneau type ambassador role, Torrey Hunter, LaTroy Hawkins, and that sort of thing, I think his burn would be a little bit longer. Obviously, Morneau's kids are a little bit older, I think, and Torrey Hunter's kids are obviously much older. But I'm not sure that Joe would want to get into coaching. And honestly, based on the amount of money he's made in his career, which is plus or minus about $220 million, I don't think it makes a ton of sense for him to do a lot of coaching. Front office, some kind of easy job like Kirby Puckethead with a corner office at Target Field like Puckett had at the Metrodome might make some sense. But honestly, I think if any player was not going to do much after their career and just kind of fade into the abyss, Joe Mauer would definitely be that kind of player. So I don't think after Joe Mauer retires, we'll see or hear much from him for, I'd say, 3 to 5 years while he figures out what it's like to be a full-time dad. That's not a knock on his fatherhood skills, but just see what it's like to be home during the season. And honestly, I think that would be, it'd be good for him. It'd be good for his family and that sort of thing. So I'm leaning in the camp that he does retire at the end of this season. It's not something I'm wishing for. I'm going to be there on Sunday to see it regardless of what happens. And I don't know. I mean, he debuted the month that I graduated from high school, or a month before I did. So this is, it's kind of bookended my adulthood, and that's, a little bit more serious than maybe I was considering beforehand. And so, I don't know. We'll see. But hey, if Aaron Summers is listening or is watching or watches this on YouTube after the fact, shoot me your address on Twitter and we'll get you the Prince Fielder starting lineup doll. All right, we're going to do some rapid fire questions and then we're going to call it a night. Just let me scroll down here, make sure I don't close it out. All right, so I was on a radio show with Mitch Widmeyer in Des Moines last week, asking me what I thought about the Addison Russell situation. No winners here. As much as it looks good for the Cubs to put him on administrative leave and that sort of thing, we really didn't learn that much new stuff to the point where you can say, yeah, good job, Cubs, for suspending him. They waited a year while pretty much everything kind of was, we think this is what happened, we've heard this is what happened. And then Melissa, his ex-wife, I believe I have the name right, posted that blog that detailed both the mental and physical abuse suffered at the hands of Addison Russell. Obviously, Joe Madden has had some unfulfilling and unsatisfying answers about, not reading Melissa's version of what happened. And, there's a lot of ways to handle this thing. And I'm just not sure anybody did a real great job. Starting with Addison, but all the way down. It's been a bad look for everybody involved. And I'm just not sure where you go from here, but it's obviously not been a good situation. Bronk Finley asked, the Angels are offering Mike Trout a lifetime deal. Do the Twins do the same with Willians Astudillo? That's right up my alley. Willians Astudillo's done a terrific job catching while Mitch Garver's been on the shelf, kind of holding off Chris Jimenez here down the stretch to be the regular catcher for the Twins. All jokes aside, does he survive the offseason on the 40-man roster? I think so. And, next year maybe you have him on a short bench. He can play catcher, he can fill in at third, first, maybe a little bit of second, he can fill in all over. So I think Astudillo's safe on the roster here. They're going to probably do their cuts within the next week or so, and you'll see some of the guys that were iffy 40-man guys, be off that list, and they'll start having to build up, not only adding guys internally, but also free agency trades, that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens there. Devlin Clark says, what's the biggest issue that the Twins must address this offseason? And for me, catcher. you got to find your long-term catcher. Jason Castro, even if he's healthy, even if the meniscus is back to good, doesn't give you much offensively. He's only signed through next year. Go sign Yasmani Grandal. Get it done. I've written at length on that subject. You can Google search Brandon Warren, Yasmani Grandal. Give him 4 years and $18 million per. I don't care. He's a terrific defensive catcher who can really hit. Go get Grandal. Sinbin says, do you think the Twins' rotation is fine to roll out with what they have for 2019? A lot of young guys in AAA. I'd like to see shots instead of signing aging mediocre guys. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to sign any bridge guys, 1-2 year deals. Obviously, your Mike Pelfreys, Kevin Correa's of the world. I think if you're going to go out and sign a pitcher, you have to aim in that Patrick Corbin, Dallas Keuchel level of pitcher. Do I think they're going to get that kind of pitcher? Do I think they're going to spend the kind of money necessary? Probably not. Though, if they were ever going to do it, it would be now with only $30 million committed to next year's payroll, plus or minus in terms of hard committed. You still got arbitration dollars and that sort of thing. But if they were to ever give out a big kind of deal, or more than one, if you wanted to sign not only Yasmani Grandal, but a pitcher, this would be the offseason to do it. So I think otherwise you hope that Fernando Romero, you hope that one of Cole Stewart or Steven Gonsalves give you something. You have to imagine Michael Pineda's in that mix. You've got Gibson, you've got Odorizzi, you've got Barrios. And so I just think that all of those guys give you enough bodies. But that's where you do really need a number one or at least a very solid pitcher like a Patrick Corbin, Dallas Keuchel to give you a chance. So that's where I kind of stand on what pitching needs to be addressed. They'll obviously have to add a bullpen arm or two, but lots of options there. David Robertson, Urias Familia, lots of guys there. Adam Wettrick had 2 questions, and we'll kind of break it up here before we go. He says, in a perfect world, Buxton is healthy for 2019, and his production is like it was last year in the second half, meaning that the outfield is set. In that case, would it be Cave or Grossman as the 4th outfielder? Yes, he is. Cave is a lefty, but the kid can go. I'm not quite sure what that means. But Jake Cave, to me, is the perfect 4th outfielder in that he's good enough to start most days. He can give you a break if Buxton's struggling, you can move someone over from center or from left to center or right to center. You don't have to play Cave in center, but in a pinch you can. I just think Cave is a perfect 4th. I think the difference between Cave and a quality, very good starting outfielder is either improved defense in center field or plate discipline. As it stands right now, I think he could be, a very, very nice player, a very nice complimentary player, but I don't know that a team wins a division with Jake Cave playing every single day in the outfield. Maybe they do. But then the rest of the team's got to be stacked. I just think that Jake Cave, as it stands right now, just doesn't give you enough OBP-wise, and the defense in the corners isn't enough to make up for it. And you can't play him in center every single day on a winning team. So for me, he'd be the 4th. It obviously puts Grossman in question. It obviously puts Zach Granite in question. He may not even last the offseason on the 40-man roster, but we'll see what happens there. And then the second part of Adam's question is Cave an upgrade from Kepler at this point? And the 4th outfielder spot would then come down to Grossman or Kepler next spring, to which I say no. He's not an upgrade on Kepler. I still believe in Kepler's skill set. I still believe in Kepler as a defender, and I just think Kepler is a better center fielder. I think if I were to rank the non-center fielders in center field, it would go Kepler, Rosario, Cave, and then a big, big gorge, and then Robbie Grossman, who I don't have any interest in seeing in center field ever. I might have him not too far from Williams Astudillo. So, yeah. I don't know. I think Max Kepler's pretty safely going to be starting for this ball club next year. And if they can do Rosario, Buxton, Kepler with Jake Cave in the mix, that is a step in the right direction towards a pretty dang good team next year. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Again, this has been Views from the 612. Thanks for hanging out. We'll try to come back here in a couple nights, show off some football jerseys with a little bit of class on top. All right. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Peace.